Board Gamers Anonymous at the table. This week we have a special game that just came in, and it is not even out yet. So I think this hits store shelves at the end of March. It is called Castles of Caladale. The designer is David Wilkinson, and this is coming from Renegade Games here in the next month or so. So it is a quick tile-laying game, and that's about it. But it's a little more complex than I made it sound. We'll take a look and you'll see kind of what I mean. It does a good job, straddles the line between complicated, not too complicated, fun, simple, accessible, has some ways to scale it up. Again, we'll take a look here in a second. All right, guys, let us take a look at Castles of Caladale. Now, first things first, it has a nifty little sleeve. I know it's silly, but I love these things. I don't know why. Just a nice little touch, adds a little bit of texture to the front of the box. Opening it up very slowly, we have not a whole lot of components. And again, this is a very straightforward tile laying game. You take a tile, you lay a tile. I will show you in just a second, but it's not that complicated. In fact, it's so not complicated that the rule book consists of overview, components, setup, rules. That's it. It actually has more space set aside for the placement rules and scoring than it does for just about anything else. So I'll show you in a minute why that is, but as you can see, there are something like 15 different placement rules you have to keep in mind on this one, which is not surprising if you've played other similar games, but it does make for some very interesting castles, as you can see here. All right, so let's dive in. Look what we got in the box here. We got a placement board. At any given point, you're gonna have 9 tiles out. On the flip side, you have the score track. Scoring is not that difficult in the game, but it definitely helps, especially if you're playing with younger players, to be able to do that real quick. To that end, we have our little scoring meeples here. This is all they're for at the end of the game. If you use the score track, you use these guys. And so with more advanced gamers, you probably won't do that. There are 2 sets of tiles. There are the brown plus on the back, and then the darker blackish plus on the back. By default, what you're going to do is use all of these, and then if you play with 3 or 4 players, you toss these in. So if you're playing with 2 people, you don't use these, 1 or 2. But if you use everybody, if you're playing 3 or 4 players, you throw all the tiles in. So it scales a little bit, so you don't have too crazy sized towers if you're dealing with just a couple people. All right, so pulling everything out here, this is our tile stack. And these are pretty much, they're all unique. Every tile is pretty much different. There are a couple duplicates here and there, different types and styles. But as you can see, what they do, most of them anyways, is they offer multiple different building types. So there are 3 building types in the game. We have stone, we have like the just normal house, and then we have tree, or as I like to call it, mud. It's not mud, but it looks like mud. There's also a couple different features you have to watch out for. We have towers. These only go on the top of the buildings. We have sky that will indicate an edge, and a couple other little things we'll get to as we go through here. So basically what you're doing in this game is you are setting up a tableau, and I'm making a mess here, so let me clean this up and get it out of the way so you can actually watch what I'm doing here. But what you're doing is you're making a tableau that follows a few pretty basic rules of placement. And the goal is to build the biggest tower without any open sides. Now, an open side is this. These are all open sides because there's no sky on any of those. Were you to do this, now you have 3 open sides. And so the goal in the game is to have as few open sides as possible, to the point that you lose a significant number of points for every open side. And we'll get to that in just a second. So when you start the game, you're going to get one of these 4 starting tiles. They are all a little bit different. On each of them, there is one side that has 2 different building materials and one side that's just one. And it's up to you which side you want to use. The base here, you're going to place one of these on the base. and then you're going to build out from there. Now, basic rule here is everything has to touch the base on the base level. So if you're going to build, this would be the part where I have to try to make this work. You wouldn't be able to do this, for example, because there's nothing underneath this particular thing right here, but you could do this. You can put the tile off the edge because it's sky over the side. Pretty basic, right? Other rules are you need to match up all these different building materials. So you couldn't have, stone attached to wood. It needs to be wood attached to wood. So if you've played Carcassonne or any of the others, you know the drill. Other rules, you just got to make sure that everything matches up. The towers need to go on the top. So they need to close out the top of a space. And then if you're going to have sky enclosed in something, it needs to be fully enclosed. You can't just have sky hanging out over the rest of the castle. So that's pretty much the basics there. And you're going to build out and up and out and up and out and up until all the tiles are gone from the board. So you can see how many tiles there are here. This would be with 2 players. You're going to have something like 20, 25 tiles on your tableau. And so it can get pretty big. This table here, it actually wasn't quite enough space without having to kind of scoot to the side. We couldn't play across from each other. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is the actual placement rules. So how this works is you're going to put 9 tiles on this board here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And every turn, each player is going to grab one of these, replace it with another one from face down stacks. So these would all be face down. You don't have to place it in your castle when you take it. So what you can do is you can take this and you can say, okay, well, I don't really have anywhere good to place this. I mean, in this case, you could put it right there, but let's say you don't. You flip it upside down, it's worth 1 point guaranteed. Now, you can't do that later. That's the trick. So if you decide you're going to place it in your castle, you place it here, and 3 turns later you decide, actually, I can't use that. Too bad, you're stuck with it. Now, the thing about Castles of Caladale that's interesting, and it's different than a lot of other tile laying games, is you can rearrange these anytime you want. You want to go that direction, so you can do something cool like that, go for it. You want to go back, go the other direction, so you can, build something off of here, go for it. It's completely up to you how you want to build this. And at the end of the game, you'll get a chance to kind of rearrange it all a little bit more and make sure it looks good and matches everything you're aiming for. So that is something interesting. It is potentially very time consuming. And so the box comes with a nifty sand timer. It's about 30 seconds. I haven't used this yet. People are pretty good about working on this as the game goes along. But at the end of the game especially, as a kind of a final rearrange your stuff before we score, often we'll flip this. You have 30 seconds, rearrange, and then we're done. Now, what happens if you can't use everything? If you have tiles you cannot use, let's say you've rearranged and you're like, I really can't do anything with this. It comes off, it's worth nothing. You don't get negative points, it's just not worth anything. Every open side is -2 points. So you could have potentially as many as -6 points off of one tile. So that's very dangerous if you're not careful. Each placed tile on the tableau is worth 2 points. So even if only one side is exposed on a tile, it negates it completely. So it's important to make sure you can actually use a tile if you take it. At the end of the game especially, you might just take a lot of face down tiles, especially if you've managed to fill it out already. If you manage to complete it on all sides, you get 2 bonus points. If you place a tower on it, that's an extra point for every tower that's properly placed. There are wild cards that everybody's going to start the game with. And if you have to use this, and you can see here, it can attach to anything. It's wood. So you can use it to kind of close off any edge if you want to. These are worth negative points. If you don't use them, nothing happens. If you use it, negative points. But it can save you even more negative points if you use it properly. And that's about it. Once you finish everything up, you'll clear this off. If there's anything there, flip it over, and then run your scores. 2 per tile, 2 bonus points for completing it, and then all the other stuff we talked about. And that's basically it, and you score up and see who wins. With 2 people, this takes about 20 minutes. With 4 people, not much longer. You have the extra tiles, maybe a half an hour. Very, very quick. The decisions are so basic. There's really only 3 different types of building materials you're going to put out. So at any given point, there aren't that many decisions to make. And there are actually variants in the book to speed it up further, where you can add a cyan timer to every round, which is very interesting and makes for about a 5-minute game. I like it a lot. And that doesn't even get into the solo variant, which is basically the same thing, except you cannot rearrange your castle. You have to take a tile every time, and you have to place it somewhere. And you basically end the game once you can't take any of the tiles around here anymore, so it's much more of a puzzle. Even without that, and I like that a lot, even without that, I think it's a fun, quick, accessible, very kid-friendly game. There's no text, there's nothing, the rules take 2 seconds to teach, and you can play the game real fast. The only downside is how much space you need to play this. It's, over the course of the game, you're gonna be out way, 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 way over here, way up here. It just goes and goes and goes. You might be 10 or even 15 tiles high at some point, especially if you get a good tower going. And if you don't have a good sized table, and this one's big enough for 2 or 3 people, but let's say I wanted to play with 4, I could not play here probably. It would get a little crowded. So something to keep in mind. It's never fun to get 80% of the way through a tile laying game and realize you don't have any space left. But it's an edge case, and even if it does happen, you just kind of reorganize things however you can and finish it up. So that's Castles of Caladale. This is a lot of fun. It comes out, I think, in the next month or so, and it's worth tracking down. I think it's pretty accessible in terms of price, and I think it's a game that kids and gamers alike will enjoy. The interesting decisions you have to make here, trying to match things up, taking tiles other people might be able to use, flipping tiles when you can't use them. Let's say you can't use any tile that's on the board and you have to flip one. You pick the one that's probably going to be the most beneficial for someone else. There's a certain limited number of each of these types. These, for example, are extremely useful because they'll close off the end. There's only 2 of each color in the 2-player game. So it can be very tight and it can be very interesting. And I think it's a game that's going to stick around a little while, and I think it'll be surprisingly popular as that kind of lightweight filler tile laying game, as specific as that sounds. So all right, so I give this one a very strong play, borderline buy if you have the audience for it. If all of your gamer friends are heavy Euro players and they don't like Carcassonne or anything like it, probably not for you guys. But everybody else who has a space in their collection for games of this weight, take a look for it, pick it up. It is well worth giving a play. All right, guys, so that is everything for Castles of Caladale. This is a buy. Track this one down as soon as it comes out. It will definitely be at all the conventions this summer, I'm assuming. And enjoy it. Another great game with solo opportunities. And that's what we look for here. All right, have a good one. And until next time, this has been At the Table with BGA.